They say the universe is mostly empty space, a vast, silent ocean of nothing. But every now and then, a ripple appears. A visitor. For a long time, we thought we were alone in our own backyard. We thought our solar system was a closed room, locked from the inside. We knew the planets, we knew the asteroids, we knew the comets that looped around our sun like clockwork. They were predictable, safe. But then the door opened. It didn't happen with a bang. It didn't happen with an invasion fleet or a radio signal blasting across the radio waves. It started as a smudge, a ghost in the data, a tiny point of light moving just a little too fast, coming from a place that shouldn't exist. We called it 3-Eye Atlas. It was the third confirmed visitor from another star system. The third time history had knocked on our door. And because we had seen this before, twice before, we thought we knew what to expect. We thought we had the script. We were wrong. To understand the fear that is slowly gripping the scientific community right now, in November 2025, you have to understand the confidence we had just a few months ago. Go back to 2017. Do you remember Oumuamua? That was the first one. It was a shock to the system, a long cigar-shaped rock tumbling through space. It moved strangely. It sped up when it should have slowed down. It sparked arguments, debates, and wild theories about alien sails and dead spaceships. But eventually it left. It faded into the dark, leaving us with more questions than answers. Then came Borisov in 2019. The second visitor. That one was comforting. It looked like a comet. It acted like a comet. It had a tail. It gassed out water and dust. It told us, relax. The universe is normal. Physics is the same everywhere. So when the automated telescopes in Hawaii, the Atlas system, caught a new glint of light in late 2024, the mood wasn't fear. It was excitement. It was routine. Astronomers rubbed their hands together. They calibrated their lenses. They prepared the papers they would write. They predicted the path. They predicted the brightness. They drew a line on a graph and said, this is what 3-Eye Atlas will do. It was supposed to be a standard flyby. The object would drop in from the galactic north, swing around our sun, a moment called perihelion, and then slingshot back out into the void. A cosmic traveler stopping for a brief warm-up by the fire. For the first few months of 2025, everything seemed fine. The object was faint, just a pixel drifting against a background of fixed stars. It was hundreds of millions of miles away, deep in the freeze beyond Mars. But looking back now, I think we were seeing what we wanted to see. We were projecting our own rules onto something that didn't care about them. We looked at a wolf and called it a dog, because a dog is what we understood. Fast forward to September 2025. The location is the Atacama Desert in Chile. This is one of the driest, most desolate places on Earth. It looks like the surface of Mars. There are no trees, no birds, just red dust and rocks baking under the sun. But when the sun goes down, the sky opens up. The air is so thin and so stable that the stars don't twinkle here. They just burn. This is the home of the VLT, the Very Large Telescope. It's a fortress of science. 4 massive towers standing on a leveled mountaintop, housing mirrors over 8 meters wide. These are the eyes of humanity. They can see a coin on the moon. They can sniff the atmosphere of a planet in another galaxy. And on a cold night in late September, those giant eyes turn toward 3-Eye Atlas. The operator in the control room wasn't expecting anything groundbreaking. This was a monitoring run, just checking the boxes. The goal was to measure the light curve. Let's pause on that for a second. The light curve is everything. In astronomy, light is information. By measuring how the brightness of an object changes over time, you can learn its secrets. If an object is a jagged rock spinning in space, the light curve will look like a wave, getting brighter when the broad side faces us, and dimmer when the narrow side turns away. Up and down. Up and down. Rhythmic. Natural. If it's a comet, the curve should slowly climb. As it gets closer to the sun, the heat melts the ice. The ice turns to gas. Dust flies off. The object creates a massive, glowing cloud, a coma. It gets brighter and brighter, spiking as it gets near the sun. That is the law. That is how comets work. The astronomers in Chile set the exposure. The giant telescope hummed as it tracked the sky, compensating for the rotation of the Earth. The camera shutter opened. Photons, particles of light that had traveled for millions of years from some unknown star, bounced off this object and flew across our solar system, slammed into the sensor. The image appeared on the monitor. At first glance, it looked like a smudge, just a fuzzy dot. But then the computers began to process the data. They turned that image into a number, a magnitude. The room went quiet. The number was wrong. A technician likely checked the calibration first. That's the standard procedure. Maybe a cloud had passed overhead? No, the sky was perfectly clear. Maybe the sensor was cooling down. No, the temperature was stable. They ran the exposure again. And again. The result held. According to every model, according to the physics that govern ice and rock and sunlight, 3i Atlas should have been magnitude 14. Faint but visible. Instead, it was sitting at magnitude 18. It was dim. Much dimmer than it should have been. But that wasn't the weird part. Comets can be dark. Maybe it was covered in soot or tar. Maybe it didn't have much ice. The weird part was the shape of the data. Over the next few nights, the VLT kept watching. And the light curve? It was flat. I want you to imagine dropping a ball. You expect it to bounce, or at least to roll. You expect physics to happen. Now imagine dropping a ball and it just hovers 2 inches off the ground. That is what the data looked like. As 3i Atlas raced closer to the sun, crossing the orbit of Mars, the heat was rising. The solar radiation was hammering the surface of this object. It should have been waking up. It should have been outgassing. The brightness should have been climbing steadily, a nice smooth curve going up and to the right. But the line on the graph was a flat, dead horizontal. It wasn't reacting. It wasn't getting brighter. It wasn't reflecting more light. It was absorbing the energy. It was taking the sunlight and doing nothing with it. This is where the predictable passage narrative began to crack. Emails started flying between observatories, from Chile to Hawaii to the Canary Islands. The subject lines went from routine observation to anomaly detected to urgent confirmation needed. One astronomer in Germany described it as looking at a hole in the sky. He said, "It's like the object is refusing to shine." Denial is a powerful thing in science. It has to be. You can't just jump to aliens every time you see something weird. You have to exhaust every other possibility first. You have to be the skeptic. So the explanations started coming out. Maybe it's a dead rock, some said. An asteroid, not a comet. If it was just dry rock, it wouldn't outgaze. No tail, no coma. That would explain why it wasn't getting huge and fuzzy. But it didn't explain the flatness. Even a rock gets brighter as it gets closer to a light bulb. If you walk toward a campfire, your face gets brighter. That's simple geometry. For the brightness to stay flat while the object gets closer, that implies the object is getting darker physically as it approaches. It implies the surface is changing its reflectivity, its albedo, in real time, perfectly countering the increased sunlight. Nature doesn't usually do that. Nature is messy. Nature fluctuates. Then came the orientation theory. Maybe the object was shaped like a needle, pointing directly at Earth. If we were looking down the barrel of a long, thin object, the surface area wouldn't change much. It could mask its brightness. It was a good theory. It comforted people. It made the math work again. But then the VLT took another look. They used an instrument called Sphere, a high-contrast imager. They tried to resolve the shape. They couldn't see a shape. But they analyzed the light spectrum. Look at this graph. This is the actual visualization of the anomaly. The dotted line is what a rock does. The dashed line is what a comet does. The solid red line, that is 3i Atlas. It's unnatural. It's too stable. It was around mid-October when the word intentional was whispered for the first time. Not in a press conference, not on the news, but in the break rooms of university departments. It looks like it's hiding, someone would say, half joking. It looks like stealth, another would reply, not joking at all. By late October 2025, the tension was palpable. The object was crossing the frost line, the boundary in the solar system where water ice turns instantly to gas. This is the moment of truth for any comet. It's the moment the mask comes off. When the heat hits, the ice screams. It blasts off the surface, creating a tail millions of miles long. It's a violent, beautiful, chaotic event. We pointed everything we had at it. We wanted to see the fireworks. We wanted to see the chemistry of another star system burning in our sky. We waited for the bloom. We waited for the spike in the data. We got silence. Not radio silence. We weren't listening for radios yet. We got physical silence. No gas, no dust, no tail. The object pierced through the frost line like a bullet through fog. It didn't react. It didn't shed a single kilogram of mass. It simply continued its impossible, flat-line journey toward the sun. This was unnerving. Because even the hardest, deadest rocks shed something. The solar wind strips atoms off the surface. The heat cracks the crust. But 3i Atlas was pristine. It was holding itself together with a strength that rock shouldn't possess. And then the silence changed. It wasn't just that the object was quiet. It was the quality of the data. The noise, the random static you always get in astronomical data, started to smooth out. Usually a light curve is fuzzy. The atmosphere shimmers, the sensor buzzes. The line is jagged. But as November approached, the data coming from the VLT became smooth. Too smooth. It was as if the object wasn't just reflecting sunlight, it was correcting for it. We stand now at the edge of something we don't understand. The calendar on the wall says November 2025. Outside, the world is going on as normal. People are driving to work. They're buying groceries. They're worrying about bills and politics and the weather. But look up, past the blue sky, past the moon, past the orbit of Mars. There's a visitor rushing toward our sun at 60,000 miles per hour. It isn't behaving like a rock. It isn't behaving like a comet. It broke the rules of brightness. It ignored the heat of the sun. It refused to speak when the laws of physics demanded a scream. The astronomers at the VLT are tired. Their eyes are red from staring at screens, trying to find the error in the code, trying to find the smudge on the lens. They are desperate to find the mistake. Because if there is no mistake, then the implications are terrifying. If nature didn't make this curve, what did? We expected a predictable passage. We expected a lifeless stone tumbling through the dark. But as the first days of November tick by, the data is telling us a different story. The silence isn't empty. It feels heavy. It feels expectant. The light curve is wrong. The perihelion is approaching. And in the deep, cold quiet of space, something is about to break the silence. We thought we were watching it. But looking at the data now, looking at that impossible, flat red line, I'm starting to wonder, is it watching us? We have a saying in science, the numbers don't lie. We cling to that. It is our anchor. People can lie. Eyewitnesses can be mistaken. Cameras can glitch. But a raw data stream, a pure feed of photons hitting a sensor, that is supposed to be the truth. It is the universe speaking directly to us without a filter. But on the morning of November 5th, 2025, the numbers started telling us something that couldn't possibly be true. If Act 1 was the silence, the strange, flat refusal of 3i Atlas to behave like a comet, Act 2 was the scream. It started in the overflow logs of the Atlas survey system in Hawaii. The automated scripts, the ones designed to flag asteroids that might hit Earth, triggered a low-level alert. Not a collision alert, a magnitude variance alert. Basically, the computer was confused. It looked at the patch of sky where 3i Atlas was supposed to be, and it said, "Error. Object is too bright." At first, the astronomers on duty dismissed it. They assumed the object had passed in front of a background star, adding the star's light to its own. It's a common thing. It happens all the time. You wait an hour, the object moves, the brightness drops back down. So they waited. They went to get coffee. They let the telescope track. They let the Earth rotate. When they came back, the alert wasn't gone. It was flashing red. The brightness hadn't dropped. It had doubled. And then right before their eyes, as the next set of images downloaded from the satellite link, it doubled again. In the span of 4 hours, 3i Atlas had gone from a dark, stealthy ghost to a beacon burning in the deep solar system. The prediction models, the ones we had spent 2 years building, the ones that said this was a simple rock, were shattered instantly. The curve on the graph didn't just climb, it went vertical. This wasn't a gentle warming. This wasn't a comet slowly waking up as it felt the sun. This was a switch being flipped. To understand why this terrified the people watching the screens, you have to understand a concept called reflectivity, or albedo. Albedo is just a fancy word for how much light something bounces back. It's a scale from 0 to 1. 0 is a black hole. It absorbs everything. 1 is a perfect mirror. It reflects everything. Most things in space are dark. We think of comets as bright snowballs, but that's only when they are melting. The nucleus of a comet, the solid heart of it, is usually as black as charcoal. It has an albedo of about 0.04. It reflects almost nothing. It hides in the dark. For months, 3i Atlas had an albedo of 0.03. It was darker than coal. It was almost invisible. That fits the profile of an ancient, organic-covered rock drifting between the stars. But when that alert went off in Hawaii, the calculations changed. Based on the amount of light coming off it, the albedo didn't just inch up. It skyrocketed. It went from 0.03 to 0.8. Do you know what has an albedo of 0.8? Fresh, pristine snow, or polished metal. This is the anomaly. This is the word that started appearing in every subject line of every urgent email sent across the globe that night. Natural objects do not change their skin that fast. Enceladus, the moon of Saturn, is one of the brightest things in the solar system because it is covered in fresh ice. But Enceladus has been that way for millions of years. It didn't decide to put on a coat of white paint in a single afternoon. If 3i Atlas was a natural comet, the only way to explain this shift would be a catastrophic explosion. The entire surface would have to explode outward, revealing a layer of perfectly clean white ice underneath, all at once, in every direction. But an explosion is messy. An explosion creates a cloud. It creates a fuzzy, expanding blob of dust that slowly dissipates over weeks. We looked at the images from the high-resolution cameras. We looked for the cloud. We looked for the debris. There was nothing. The object was still a sharp, singular point of light. It hadn't exploded. It hadn't crumbled. It had simply shifted. It was as if someone had walked into a dark room, holding a piece of velvet, and then suddenly dropped it to reveal a mirror. By the next morning, the scientific community was in chaos. The discovery models, the trajectory and behavior predictions we had relied on since the object was found, were useless. They were predicting the behavior of a rock. We were clearly not looking at a rock. A hastily arranged video conference was held between the European Southern Observatory and the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. The mood wasn't excited, it was tense, there were no smiles, just tired people rubbing their temples, looking at a graph that made no sense. One planetary scientist, a woman who had spent her entire career studying cometary outbursts, pointed at the screen and said, "Physics has a speed limit." She was talking about thermodynamics. Heat takes time to travel. Even if the sun was boiling the surface, the heat has to soak in. It has to conduct. Rock is a bad conductor. Ice is a bad conductor. For the entire surface of an object miles wide to change its properties simultaneously, the heat transfer would have to be instantaneous. That's impossible. Unless the change wasn't caused by the sun. That was the thought hanging in the air. The elephant in the digital room. If the sun didn't do this, then the energy came from the inside. This was the first true shift in our perception. Until that moment, we viewed 3i Atlas as a passive object, a driftwood log floating in the ocean, getting pushed by the waves. But this sudden spike in reflectivity suggested it wasn't passive. It was reacting, or it was executing a process. Imagine you are watching a stone sitting on the sidewalk. It sits there for days. Then suddenly it glows white hot for 10 seconds, then turns back to gray. You wouldn't think, wow, the sun hit that. Stone weird. You would think, that is not a stone. The skeptics, and there were still many holding the line for sanity, argued for geometry. They said maybe it's a flat metallic sheet, maybe it's a shard of a destroyed planet, and it just happened to rotate perfectly to catch the sunlight and flash it at Earth. A glint. That's what they called it. A specular reflection, like catching the sun off a car windshield from a mile away. It was a desperate explanation, but it was better than the alternative. So we watched. We waited for the glint to fade. If it was a rotation, it would flash and then go dark again as the object spun. We watched for an hour, 2 hours, 10 hours. The brightness didn't fade, it held. The object wasn't flashing, it was glowing. This is the moment where the story changes from astronomy to mystery. When we look at the universe, we carry a toolkit of assumptions. We assume things are round. We assume things are cold. We assume things are dead. 3i Atlas was stripping those assumptions away, one by one. First it refused to create a tail. Then it refused to follow the brightness curve. Now it was refusing to obey the laws of thermal inertia. The unknown visitor was no longer just unknown because it came from far away. It was unknown because we didn't have a category for it. In the data logs from November 7th, 2025, you can see the struggle in the notes written by the observers. Measurement error? Instrument recalibration needed? Reference star contamination? They were trying to find the mistake in the lens because the truth was too hard to process. But the telescope doesn't judge, it just sees. And what it saw was a dramatic shift that defied natural explanation. Consider the timing. The object had just crossed the orbit of Mars. It was entering the Goldilocks zone of the solar system, the place where water is liquid, where life exists, our zone. And exactly at that boundary, it decided to shine. Was it a shield? Some theorists started to whisper about thermal protection. If you are an interstellar traveler, a machine, a probe, an archive, and you drop into a solar system, the biggest danger is the star, the radiation, the heat. If you want to survive the perihelion, the closest approach, you need to reflect that heat away. You need to become a mirror. Did we just watch 3i Atlas deploy a heat shield? It sounds like science fiction. It sounds like a movie. But look at the graph. Look at the vertical line. Nature doesn't have switches. Machines do. There is a terrifying possibility that we discussed quietly in those days. What if we were misinterpreting the most basic data? When we calculate the size of an object in space, we don't use a ruler. We can't go out there and measure it. We estimate the size based on the brightness. If an object is very bright, we assume it's big. If it's dim, we assume it's small. But that math relies on knowing the reflectivity. We assume a standard rockiness. When 3i Atlas was dim, we thought it was a medium-sized object, maybe a few hundred meters across, covered in dark dust. But now that we knew the reflectivity could change, now that we knew it could turn into a mirror, our size calculations were meaningless. If it was a perfect mirror, it could be much smaller than we thought. A tiny, highly reflective sphere. Or, if it was glowing from its own internal light, it could be anything. We realized we didn't know how big it was. We didn't know what shape it was, we didn't know what it was made of. All we knew was that it was spiking. The energy coming off it was increasing exponentially. And then, something else happened. The light didn't just stay high, it started to shimmer. It wasn't a steady glow anymore, it was trembling. The atmospheric sensors picked it up first, subtle variations in the intensity, tiny dips and rises. At first, we thought it was the atmosphere, the twinkle of the stars, but the reference stars nearby were steady. 3-Eye Atlas was the only thing in the sky that was trembling. It was like watching a light bulb that isn't screwed in all the way. A flicker, a hesitation, or a code. We are visual creatures. We look for shapes. We look for brightness. But sometimes the truth isn't in the picture. It's in the timing. As Act 2 closes, the scientific world is in a state of suspended disbelief. The models are broken. The textbooks are useless. We are staring at a light in the sky that has defied our predictions at every turn since its discovery. We asked, could a natural process cause this immediate and dramatic shift? We looked at volcanoes. We looked at outgassing. We looked at collisions. None of them fit the data. None of them explained the speed, the intensity, the clean precision of the change. So we are left with the uncomfortable alternative. We are misinterpreting the visitor because we are treating it as an object. We are treating it as dead matter subject to gravity and heat. But dead matter doesn't change its skin in 4 hours. Dead matter doesn't wait until it crosses the orbit of Mars to reveal itself. The anomaly is real. The shift is real. And now as the telescopes lock on to that shimmering, trembling light, we are about to find out that the chaos in the data isn't chaos at all. The spike was just the attention getter. It was the hand raising in the classroom. Now that it has our attention, it's going to start speaking. Because that tremble in the light, that flickering that we thought was instability, if you look closely, if you zoom in on the timeline, it's repeating. The silence is over. The pulse is beginning. There is a rhythm to the universe. We hear it in the ticking of a pulsar, the spinning remnants of a dead star that sweeps a beam of radiation across the galaxy like a lighthouse. We see it in the orbits of planets, the endless silent circles that mark the passing of years. Nature loves a cycle. Nature loves a loop. But nature is also messy. A planet's orbit wobbles. A pulsar slows down over millions of years as it loses energy. A spinning asteroid tumbles chaotically, its brightness rising and falling in a messy, imperfect wave. Nature is like a drummer who keeps good time but adds a little swing, a little variation, a little humanity to the beat. What we saw on November 12th, 2025 had no swing. It had no wobble. It had no variation. It was the most terrifying thing a scientist can ever see in raw data. Perfection. If Act 1 was the silence and Act 2 was the scream, Act 3 is the heartbeat. The trembling light that we noticed at the end of the shift, that tiny flicker we thought was atmospheric interference, wasn't random. It wasn't the air moving. It wasn't the telescope shaking in the wind. It was a signal. It began as a subtle dip in the brightness. Imagine a candle burning in a dark room. Every so often, someone passes their hand in front of the flame. For a split second, the room gets dimmer, then the light returns. That is what 3-Eye Atlas was doing. At first, the automated systems filtered it out. We design our software to ignore noise. We tell the computers, if you see a tiny flicker that lasts for 3 seconds, ignore it. It's probably a cosmic ray hitting the camera. It's probably a glitch. So for days, the computer was throwing away the most important data in human history. It was cleaning up the mess, scrubbing the signal clean, presenting us with a nice, steady line. But a graduate student in the Canary Islands, a young researcher looking for exoplanets, decided to look at the raw feed. The dirty data. The unfiltered stream of photons. She pulled up the logs from the previous night. She zoomed in on the timeline. She saw the dip. Then she scrolled forward. She saw another dip. She measured the time between them. 17.4 hours. She scrolled back. Another dip. 17.4 hours. She checked the data from the week before, back when the object was still dark, before the reflective shift. The data was noisy, hard to read, but there, buried in the static, was the shadow of the same pattern. 17.4 hours. She didn't call her professor immediately. She did what any of us would do. She assumed she was crazy. She assumed the telescope had a mechanical issue. Maybe a gear was slipping every 17 hours. Maybe a satellite was passing overhead in a specific orbit. She checked the orbital registers. No satellites matched. She checked the maintenance logs. The gears were fine. She posted the chart to a private server used by the 3-Eye Atlas tracking team. She added a simple caption. Is anyone else seeing a beat? Within 20 minutes, a reply came from an observatory in Australia. Confirmed, we have the same dip, but yours is at the start of the window. Ours is at the end. Then a reply from Hawaii. We have it too. It's synchronized. This is the moment the instrumental noise theory died. If it was a glitch in the camera, only one telescope would see it. If it was the Ita atmosphere, observatories on opposite sides of the planet wouldn't see it at the same time. This was external. This was coming from the object. And it wasn't just a dip anymore. As the object got brighter, as that mirror-like skin reflected more and more sunlight, the dip became a pulse. The pattern sharpened. It wasn't just a dimming, it was a rhythmic modulation. Bright. Wait 17.4 hours. Pulse. Wait 17.4 hours. Pulse. It was mechanical. It was precise, down to the millisecond. Shutterstock explore. When we model the rotation of a natural object, we look for a sine wave, a smooth curve. Picture a potato spinning in space. The broad side reflects more light, the narrow side reflects less. The light goes up, curves over the top, comes down, curves at the bottom. It's gentle. This pulse, it wasn't a curve. It was a spike. The graph looked like an EKG. It looked like a heart monitor hooked up to a patient in shock. Flat, 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 spike, flat, 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 spike. Nature doesn't make square waves. Nature doesn't make spikes that sharp. To create a signal like that naturally, an object would have to be shaped like a perfectly flat mirror on one side and vantablack on the other, spinning with the precision of an atomic clock. Or it wasn't spinning at all. This is where the lighthouse theory began to circulate. What if the object isn't tumbling? What if 3i Atlas is stable, locked on a trajectory, not spinning? If it's not spinning, then the pulse isn't a reflection of the sun. The pulse is emission. It means the object is flashing. It means that every 17.4 hours, something on the surface of that visitor activates. A vent opening, a shield rotating, a sensor sweeping the darkness. The pulse in the dark became the only thing we watched. We stopped looking at the trajectory. We stopped looking at the coma. We just watched the clock. In control rooms around the world, countdown timers appeared on the screens. Next event, 0422 local time. Astronomers gathered around the monitors like people waiting for the ball to drop on New Year's Eve. The silence in those rooms was heavy. You could hear the cooling fans of the server racks. You could hear people breathing. 3, 2, 1. Pulse. The brightness would jump. The sensors would flood with light, and then just as quickly it would vanish. It was mesmerizing. And it was terrifying. Because a machine that counts is a machine that has a purpose. A rock doesn't care about time. A rock doesn't know what an hour is. But this thing was keeping time. And the timing, 17.4 hours, started to drive us mad. We tried to match it to something. Anything. Was it the rotation rate of Earth? No, that's 24 hours. Was it the rotation rate of Mars? No, that's 24.6 hours. Was it related to Jupiter, the Sun? A pulsar in the background? It matched nothing. It was its own time. It was a rhythm brought from somewhere else. A rhythm from a place where the days are 17.4 hours long, or a rhythm set by an internal clock counting down to something? This brings us to the question that haunted the late nights of November. Is the machine counting or is it breathing? Breathing is a metaphor, of course. We don't think it has lungs, but in engineering, systems breathe. They cycle. They vent heat. They recharge capacitors. They purge data buffers. If 3i Atlas is a derelict probe, a dead ship drifting through the void, maybe this pulse is just a watchdog timer. A specialized system that wakes up every 17.4 hours, checks if the ship is still alive, pings the status, and goes back to sleep. A heartbeat in a coma, that would be the breathing theory. It implies the object is passive. It implies it's just surviving. But the counting theory, that is the darker path. A counter implies a sequence. A counter implies that the pulse is doing work. Is it scanning? Every time that pulse hits, the light curve changes slightly. We started to notice a secondary pattern inside the pulse. The first pulse is pure white light. The second pulse, 17.4 hours later, has a slight shift toward the ultraviolet. The third pulse shifts toward the infrared. It's cycling through the spectrum. It's like a radar system changing frequencies. It's tasting the sunlight, it's tasting the solar wind, and with every pulse, the signal gets stronger. In Act 2, we talked about the reflectivity spike. That was the shield going up. That was the armor. Now in Act 3, the armor is active. The systems are coming online. The hum of the machine is getting louder. We tried to beam a signal back. It was a controversial decision. There are protocols for this. You aren't supposed to shout at an unknown object until the global community agrees. But fear makes people impatient. A radio telescope in Australia, unauthorized, sent a high-power ping toward 3i Atlas exactly at the moment of the pulse. A handshake. Hello, we see you. They waited 17.4 hours for the next window. They wanted to see if the rhythm would change. They wanted to see if the object would flinch. The time came. 3, 2, 1. Pulse. It didn't change by a millisecond. It didn't acknowledge the signal. It didn't care. That indifference is almost worse than hostility. If it attacked us, that would mean it noticed us. That would mean we matter. But this synchronized mechanical precision, it treats us like we aren't even here. It treats our solar system like a gas station. It's just here to refuel, to run its diagnostics, to cycle its systems. The signal isn't for us. That's the realization that sank in by mid-November. We are watching a lighthouse, but the beam isn't meant to warn ships. It's meant to talk to something else. Or it's meant to find something else. As the data piled up, we started mapping the pulses. We put them on a 3D chart of the solar system. Pulse 1 happened here. Pulse 2 happened here. Pulse 3 happened here. When you connect the dots, when you draw a line through the location of the object at the exact moment of each pulse, you don't just get a random trail, you get a pattern. The pulses aren't happening at random times. They are happening at specific geometric points in space. It's clicking every time it aligns with something. We checked the star charts, we checked the planetary alignments, and then we saw it. The pulses are synchronized with the ecliptic plane, the invisible flat disk where all the planets orbit the sun. Every time 3i Atlas crosses a specific magnetic harmonic of our solar system, it pulses. It's not breathing. And it's not just counting, it's mapping. It's measuring the layout of our home. It's measuring the gravity wells of Jupiter, of Saturn, of Earth. It's building a chart of the room it just walked into. This moves us from curiosity to threat. A breathing machine is a sleeping animal. You can walk past it. A mapping machine is a surveyor. And surveyors usually come before the construction crew, or the demolition crew. The precision is absolute. At 4,000 hours, we are listening to the ticking of a clock that was wound up 1,000,000 years ago in a star system we can't see, by hands we will never shake. And the scary part isn't the ticking. The scary part is that the rhythm is getting faster. Check the logs from this morning. The last interval wasn't 17.4 hours. It was 17.3. The machine is accelerating. The heartbeat is rising. The adrenaline is kicking in. Whatever it is preparing to do, whatever systems it is warming up, it's reaching a crescendo. We thought the silence of Act 1 was heavy. We thought the reflectivity of Act 2 was blinding. But this rhythm, this pulse in the dark, it's hypnotic. It forces you to watch. It forces you to count along with it. And now, as we realize that the pulses are painting a map of our own solar system, a new question arises. It is mapping the ecliptic. It is finding the planets. But why? Is it looking for a path through the maze, or is it looking for the inhabitants? The pulse is strong. The pulse is steady. But the pattern is changing. And as we look at where the next pulse is scheduled to happen, we realize it's going to align perfectly with something we know very well. It's not just mapping the empty space anymore. It's about to point directly at Earth. There's a moment in every investigation where coincidence stops being a valid explanation. If you find a key on the ground, that's an accident. If you find a lock that fits it 10 miles away, that's strange. But if you put the key in the lock, turn it, and a door opens. That is design. For the last 2 weeks, we have been obsessed with the rhythm, the pulse, that heartbeat repeating every 17.3 or 17.4 hours. We treated it like a sound, a drumbeat coming from the dark. We were listening to the when. But while the world was counting the seconds, a small team of thermal imaging specialists at the Space Telescope Science Institute was looking at the where. They weren't looking at the visible light, they were looking at the heat. When a rock spins in space, it heats up evenly. The side facing the sun gets hot, the side facing away gets cold. It's a smooth gradient, like the Earth's day and night. But when the James Webb Space Telescope finally turned its gold mirrors toward 3i Atlas 3 days ago, it didn't see a smooth gradient. It saw dots. It saw hot spots. Imagine a dark globe. Now imagine someone holding a flashlight inside it and there are pinholes drilled into the surface. The light and the heat doesn't glow from the whole object. It beams out of specific, tiny locations. The pulses we saw in the visible spectrum, those flashes of light that terrified us last week, aren't coming from the whole comet reacting to the sun. They are coming from distinct fixed points on the nucleus. Emitters, vents, apertures, call them what you want. But here's the detail that turned the blood cold in control rooms from Baltimore to Berlin. These points aren't scattered randomly. They aren't cracks in the ice caused by stress. They aren't random volcanoes. They are arranged in a line, a perfect geometric equator around the object. And that line isn't just drawn anywhere. It is perfectly mathematically aligned with the ecliptic plane. Let's talk about the ecliptic. It sounds like a mystical term, but it's just geometry. Our solar system is flat. The Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, we all orbit the Sun on roughly the same flat disk, like a dinner plate. Comets do not care about the dinner plate. Comets come from the Oort cloud, a giant sphere surrounding us. They dive bomb us from the top, from the bottom, from sideways angles. They tumble and spin chaotically. Their north pole points wherever it wants. They are wild. For a natural object falling into our system to accidentally align its rotation axis perfectly perpendicular to our dinner plate, the odds are astronomical. It's like throwing a spinning top off a roof and having it land on the sidewalk spinning perfectly upright. It doesn't happen. But the data on the screens this morning confirms it. 3i Atlas is not tumbling. It is stabilized. Its axis of rotation is standing straight up at a perfect 90-degree angle to the orbits of the planets. This means that the ring of hotspots, that line of emitters on its equator, is sweeping directly across the planets. Think about a lighthouse. A lighthouse works because the beam is flat. It sweeps across the ocean surface where the ships are. It doesn't waste light shining up at the clouds or down at the water. It focuses on the plane. 3i Atlas is doing exactly that. Every pulse, every flash we recorded was a beam sweeping past Earth. It explains why the signal is so strong. It explains why it's so rhythmic. It's not flashing at the universe, it's flashing at us. It is flashing at the plane where the life is. This geometric precision suggests an artificial alignment. Dead rocks don't know where the ecliptic is. Dead rocks don't know where Jupiter is. To achieve this alignment, an object needs sensors. It needs to see the solar system, calculate the plane of the planets, and then use thrusters or gyroscopes to physically rotate itself into position and lock it there. It implies station keeping. That is an engineering term. It means actively fighting against chaos to maintain a specific orientation. We are watching an object fight physics, and it is winning. So we have a stabilized object. We have emitters aligned with the planetary plane. The immediate question screaming in the minds of researchers right now is, why? Is this a natural accident? Could tidal forces from the sun somehow drag a comet into this alignment? We ran the simulations. We fed the supercomputers the mass, the speed, the gravity. The computer said no. At the speed 3i Atlas is moving, over 60,000 miles per hour, gravity doesn't have time to grab it and straighten it out. It's moving too fast. To be aligned this perfectly, it had to enter the system already aligned, or it aligned itself as soon as it crossed the threshold. This brings us to the pattern of origin. If you send a drone into a collapsed building, what is the first thing it does? It stabilizes. It levels itself. It scans the horizon. Is this standard operating procedure for interstellar probes? Maybe there are thousands of these things crisscrossing the galaxy. Maybe they all do the same thing. They drop into a star system, find the flat part where the planets are, lock onto it, and start pulsing. Here I am. I am watching. Data received. The pulse isn't just a heartbeat, it's a sweep. And the thermal data shows us something else about these emitters. They are uniform. Usually a comet vent is a jagged crack. One might be big, one might be small. One shoots gas, one shoots dust. But the thermal signature of these spots is identical. They are spaced evenly around the equator of the object. Spot, gap, spot, gap, spot, gap. It looks like a necklace of pearls glowing in the infrared. Nature loves symmetry, like a snowflake or a flower. But nature rarely creates repeated, discrete, high-energy points spaced with machine-like regularity on the surface of a dirty rock. This looks like engineering. It looks like an array. And right now, looking at the fresh data from the Webb telescope, we can see that the array is active. The heat coming from these spots is intense. It's far hotter than the surface around them. The surface of the comet is freezing, minus 100 degrees or colder. But these spots, they are radiating heat at nearly room temperature. In the vacuum of space, that is a blazing fire. Something inside the object is generating that heat and venting it, or projecting it, through these specific points. I want to take you into the mindset of the scientists today. For the last 3 weeks since the start of November, the skeptics have been holding the line. They have fought to keep the word comet in the headlines. They have fought to keep the word alien out of them. But today the mood has shifted. You can hear it in the tone of the press releases. They are getting shorter. They are getting more vague. Unusual geometric properties. Anomalous axial stability. They are using big words to hide a simple truth. They are scared. Because once you admit that the alignment is artificial, you have to admit that the trajectory might be artificial too. If it can steer its rotation, can it steer its path? We always assumed 3i Atlas was on a ballistic trajectory, falling freely under gravity. We predicted where it would go based on Newton's laws, but if it has gyroscopes, if it has thrusters, then our predictions are just guesses. A driverless car follows the road until it decides to turn. We are watching the car. We are watching it stay perfectly in the center of the lane, and we are terrified of the moment the turn signal comes on. The debate over natural accident versus deliberate pattern is effectively over in the private chat rooms of the astrophysics community. You don't get a lighthouse by accident, you don't get a radar dish by accident, and you certainly don't get a thermal array aligned with the ecliptic plane by throwing a snowball through the solar system. The structure is deliberate, and that leads to the most haunting realization. If it aligned with the ecliptic, it knows we are here. You don't align with the planets unless you care about the planets. If it was just refueling from the sun, it would face the sun. It would ignore us. But it isn't facing the sun. It's facing the orbital plane. It's facing the path where Earth, Mars, and Jupiter live. It is looking at the inhabitants, not the fireplace. So what does this mean for us? Standing here on the ground on November 25th, it means that when you look up at the night sky, you aren't looking at a random void anymore. You are standing on a stage, and a spotlight just turned on. The pulse we described before, that rhythmic flash, we now know what it is. It's the beam of that array sweeping over us. Every 17.4 hours, the Earth passes through the line of sight of one of those emitters. We are being scanned, or illuminated, or counted. And the precision of the alignment tells us that the machine is functioning perfectly. It hasn't been damaged by millions of years of travel. It isn't broken, it isn't drifting, it is sharp, it is calibrated, it is awake. The pattern of origin suggests that whoever built this, they build things to last, and they build things to find. We used to worry about the Great Filter. We used to worry that civilizations die out before they can leave their stars. 3i Atlas is proof that someone didn't die out. Someone built a traveler that can cross the abyss and still know exactly which way is up when it arrives. The implications for our philosophy, our religion, our place in the universe are crumbling in real time. We are not the center of the universe, but we are apparently interesting enough to be put on the map. As we close this chapter of the investigation, the mystery has deepened. We have moved from it's Reibnaus, it's weird to it's built. The alignment with the ecliptic is the smoking gun. It is the fingerprint of intelligence. But the thermal data from the James Webb Telescope has revealed one more thing, a detail that was almost lost in the excitement about the alignment. We talked about the hot spots, the emitters, but there's another heat source. Deep inside the data, underneath the bright glare of the pulses, the infrared sensors are picking up a background glow. The whole object is warmer than it should be, not on the surface, but coming from the inside. It's subtle. It's leaking out between the cracks. It suggests that the pulse isn't the only thing the machine is doing. The pulse is the external signal, but inside the shell, inside the dark, mirror-skinned sphere, something massive is generating power. We thought the anomaly was the light reflecting off the skin, but we are about to see that the real anomaly isn't what's bouncing off the surface. It's what is burning underneath it. The object is stabilized. The array is locked on us, and the core is beginning to overheat. Is it a reactor spinning up, or is it something else? The ecliptic map is complete. The scanner has found us. Now, the machine is getting ready to work. We can see the heat rising, and it's not coming from the sun. There is a fundamental rule in the universe that every child learns when they touch a sidewalk in summer. The side facing the sun gets hot, and the side facing the shade stays cool. It is the law of thermodynamics. It is simple. It is unbreakable. If you look at the moon, the side facing the sun is boiling, over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The dark side, the night side, is freezing, dipping down to hundreds of degrees below zero. Heat comes from the source, it hits the surface, it absorbs, it radiates away. But this morning, November 25th, 2025, 3i Atlas broke that law. We had already accepted that the object was aligned. We knew it was pulsing. We knew it was reflecting light like a mirror. But we still clung to the idea that it was, in some way, passive. We thought maybe it was a derelict, a dead ship tumbling through the dark, its systems cycling on backup power, cold and asleep. Then came the thermal maps from the high-resolution infrared sensors. The images didn't look like a moon. They didn't look like an asteroid. If you look at a natural object in infrared, it looks like a crescent. The sunlit side glows bright white and yellow with heat. The dark side fades into purple and black. It disappears against the background of space. But on the monitors in the control room right now, 3i Atlas doesn't look like a crescent. It looks like a ring. The sunlit side is there, yes. It was warm. But the night side, the back of the object, the part facing deep space, the part that had been in shadow for months, is glowing. And it wasn't just glowing, it is hotter than the day side. I want you to pause and realize how impossible that sounds. Imagine putting a stone next to a campfire. The side facing the fire gets hot. The back stays cold. Now imagine touching the back of the stone and burning your hand. That doesn't happen, not unless there is something inside the stone generating the heat. This is the thermal pattern that has officially pushed the scientific community past the breaking point today. We can no longer talk about reflection. We can no longer talk about solar heating. This is internal energy. The object isn't just a mirror, it is an engine, and the engine is running hot. When the data first arrived hours ago, the immediate reaction was sensor artifact. That's the standard defense mechanism of the human brain. We see something impossible, and we assume our eyes are broken. The team at the European Space Agency checked the coolant levels on their telescope. They checked the background radiation levels. They thought maybe a background star was shining through the object, but 3i Atlas is solid. Nothing shines through it. They recalibrated. They looked again. The heat was still there. A steady, intense radiation pouring off the dark side of the visitor. Why the dark side? Think about your laptop. Think about your car. Where do you put the vents? Where do you put the radiator? You put it in the back. You put it away from the intake. If you are a machine traveling toward a star, the sunlit side is your shield. It takes the punishment. It reflects the radiation. You don't want to open vents on that side. You don't want to let the solar fire in. So you dump your waste heat out the back. You radiate it into the dark. This is what we are seeing right now. We are seeing the exhaust of a massive system waking up. We call it waste heat in physics. It's the second law of thermodynamics. You can't do work without creating heat. If you run a computer, it gets hot. If you run a rocket, it gets hot. Even a brain thinking hard burns calories and creates heat. The amount of heat pouring off the back of 3i Atlas is staggering. It implies that inside that mirrored shell, something is consuming power on the scale of a nuclear reactor. This isn't a watchdog timer checking a circuit board. This isn't a tiny battery keeping a clock running. This is heavy industry. This is the power signature of something preparing to move, or preparing to transmit, or preparing to think. The slow awakening we suspected in Act 3 is now confirmed. The machine isn't just counting time, it is ramping up. We plotted the temperature against the timeline over the last few weeks. In September, the object was cold, dead cold. In October, during the shift, the internal temperature rose by 10 degrees. In early November, during the pulses, it rose another 50 degrees. Now, on the 25th of November, the core. Temperature is spiking. It's exponential. It looks like a startup sequence. It looks like a capacitor charging. This forces us to choose between two explanations. And honestly, I don't know which one is scarier. Option 1 is exotic physics. There are scientists right now, brilliant, terrified men and women, writing papers about dark matter interactions. They are suggesting that maybe 3i Atlas is made of some material that interacts with the solar wind in a way we don't understand. Maybe it acts like a thermocouple, converting the magnetic field of the sun directly into heat. It's a comforting thought. It keeps the universe natural. It means we just need to update our textbooks. Oh look, a new kind of rock that gets hot in the dark? Fascinating. But deep down, even the people writing those papers don't believe it. Because nature is sloppy. Nature diffuses. The heat pattern on the dark side isn't a blob. It isn't a fuzzy cloud. The infrared images show structure. There are lines of heat. There are grids. It looks like the cooling pipes on the back of a refrigerator. It looks like the veins on a hand. It has geometry. That brings us to option 2. The awakening of something built. If this is a machine and it is generating this much heat, it means it is doing something incredibly energy intensive right now. What requires that much power? Scanning? Maybe. The pulses are strong, but are they reactor hot strong? Calculation? That's a chilling thought. Is it thinking? Is it processing the data it collected from the ecliptic alignment? Is it running a simulation of our history? Is it decrypting our radio signals, or is it propulsion? This is the fear that whispers in the back of the room. We haven't seen it move yet. Not really. It's still on its ballistic trajectory, falling toward the sun. But if you are about to fire a main engine, if you are about to change course, you need to warm up the system. You need to prime the pumps. You need to get the reactor to critical mass. Is this the pre-ignition sequence? We are watching a pot of water starting to boil. The bubbles are forming. The steam is rising. And we are just standing here, watching the thermometer, wondering when it's going to whistle. The impossible temperatures are a countdown. And the tragedy, the absolute cosmic joke of it all, is the timing. We finally see the heat. We finally see the engine. We finally have proof that the dark side is hiding the secret. And where is 3i Atlas going? It is falling toward the sun. From our perspective on Earth, the object is getting closer and closer to the solar glare every day. We call it superior conjunction. It sounds technical, but it just means blindness. In a few days, the sun is going to be directly between us and the visitor. The glare will be too bright for our telescopes. The radio interference from the sun will be too loud for our antennas. We are about to lose the signal, just as the engine hits full power. Just as the heat defies physics, just as the machine truly wakes up, it is going to slip behind the curtain. We will be blind. The scientists know this. You can feel the desperation in the observation schedules. They are canceling other projects. They are bumping galaxy surveys. Everyone wants one last look at the thermal map before the glare takes it away. Give me one more hour, they beg. Give me one more pass. Because they know that when it comes out from behind the sun in a few weeks, it might not be the same object anymore. If this heat is a metamorphosis, if this is a cocoon warming up, what is going to emerge on the other side? Will it be a rock? Will it be a ship? Or will it be gone? The heat suggests capability. It suggests that 3i Atlas is not a prisoner of gravity. It has energy. And energy means choices. It can choose to leave. It can choose to stay. And right now, the nighttime side is glowing like a red eye in the dark, staring back at deep space, rejecting the cold. It is a defiance of the void. We used to think the cold was the enemy. We used to think the silence was the enemy. But watching that temperature graph climb, watching that red line go up and up and up, I'm starting to miss the cold. Because heat is activity. Heat is life. Heat is intent. And 3i Atlas is burning with intent. The last images we have before the sun gets too close show the thermal pattern shifting again. It's not just the dark side anymore. The heat is moving. It's flowing toward the front. It's moving toward the nose of the object. Why would you heat up the front? Unless you are preparing for impact, or unless you are preparing to open something. The mystery isn't solving itself. It's evolving. We started with a smudge, then a mirror, then a pulse, then a map, now a furnace. Every layer we peel back reveals something more complex, something more energized. And now the curtain is falling. Act 6 is approaching. The silence is coming back. But this won't be the silence of empty space. It will be the silence of a room where the lights have gone out. But you know, there is someone else breathing in the dark with you. We are about to lose visual. God help us when we get it back. There's a cruel irony in astronomy. We can see a galaxy burning 12 billion light years away. We can map the surface of a black hole. We can count the atoms in a cloud of gas on the edge of the visible universe. But if you take a standard light bulb and hold it in front of your face, you can't see the person standing behind it. Glare is the ultimate curtain. It doesn't matter how big your lens is. It doesn't matter how powerful your computer is. If the source of light in the foreground is a billion times brighter than the object in the background, you are blind. For the last few weeks, we have been watching 3i Atlas with every instrument we have. We saw the shift in reflectivity. We saw the pulse. We saw the map on the ecliptic. We saw the heat rising in the core. We were reading the story page by page, terrified and mesmerized, waiting for the climax. And then, the universe slammed the book shut. It didn't happen all at once. It was a slow fade. Like a radio station driving out of range, the signal started to crackle. The images from the optical telescopes got fuzzy, washed out by the scattering of sunlight in our own atmosphere. The background sky turned from black to blue and then to a milky white haze. The object, which had been a sharp, burning point of light, dissolved into the glare. We call this superior conjunction. It is a dry academic term for a celestial vanishing act. It happens when an object moves to the opposite side of the sun from Earth. The sun sits directly in the middle, a massive ball of roaring plasma, blocking our line of sight. Usually a conjunction is just a nuisance. It's a pause. You wait a few weeks, the planets move, the angles open up, and you pick up where you left off. It's like waiting for a commercial break to end. But this time the commercial break feels like a cover-up. Because 3i Atlas didn't just drift behind the sun, it ran there. The timing is too perfect. Just as the internal reactor hit critical temperatures, just as the thermal vents opened, just as the structure aligned itself with our planets, it slipped into the one place in the solar system where we cannot see it. If you were a pilot trying to hide from radar, you would fly behind a mountain. If you were a submarine, you would dive into a thermal layer. And if you were an interstellar machine trying to undergo a massive, visibly obvious transformation without being watched, you would go behind the star. The last data packet we received before the blackout was fragmented. It came from a space telescope that pushed its safety limits, staring so close to the sun that its sensors almost fried. The image was grainy, filled with streaks of solar radiation. But in the center, you could see the visitor. It wasn't a point anymore. It was blurring. The heat we detected in the previous act had started to affect the physical shape. The outer shell, that mirror-like skin, seemed to be expanding, or vibrating. It looked like a drop of water hitting a hot pan, trembling before it boils away. And then the safety shutters slammed down. The telescope went into safe mode to protect itself from the sun. The feed cut to black. And now we wait. The silence that follows is suffocating. You have to understand the psychological toll this takes on the people involved. For a month, they have been living on adrenaline. They have been waking up every day to a new impossible number, a new impossible graph. They have been connected to this object by a stream of data that felt like a lifeline. Now the line is cut. The control rooms are quiet. The screens show no signal or target obscured. There is nothing to analyze. There is nothing to measure. There is only the imagination. And the imagination is a dangerous thing when left alone in the dark. In the break rooms and the cafeterias, the theories are getting wilder. Without data to ground them, the scientists are starting to think like writers. They are asking why instead of how. Why hide? If the object is just a machine running a program, maybe it uses the solar magnetic field to recharge. Maybe conjunction is just a fueling stop. It gets close to the star, opens its collectors, drinks the plasma, and tops off the tanks. That would explain the heat. It would explain the trajectory. It's just a pit stop. But there's a darker theory floating around. The chrysalis theory. In nature, when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, it doesn't just grow wings. It dissolves. It wraps itself in a cocoon, melts down its entire body into a soup of cells, and rebuilds itself into something completely different. It does this in private. It does this inside a shell because the process is vulnerable. What if 3i Atlas needs the cover of the sun because it is taking itself apart? What if the mirror skin was just the delivery crate? What if the object we saw, the sphere, the pulses, the heat, was just the packaging for something else inside? If the heat we saw was the crate melting, if the expansion we saw in that last blurry image was the crate opening, then what is hatching back there? We try to listen. Even if we can't see, surely we can hear? We point our radio dishes at the sun. We tune them to every frequency we can think of. But the sun is the loudest thing in the sky. It screams across the radio spectrum. It crackles and pops and roars with solar flares and coronal mass ejections. Trying to hear a delicate artificial signal coming from behind the sun is like trying to hear a whisper standing next to a jet engine. We capture terabytes of static. We run it through AI filters. We look for patterns. We look for the pulse. Every 17.4 hours, we check the static. We look for that rhythmic spike. But the solar noise is too chaotic. We think we hear it, a blip, a shadow of a tone, but then it's gone, swallowed by the roar of the star. The uncertainty is agonizing. Is it still pulsing? Is the rhythm speeding up? Has it stopped? There's a feeling of helplessness that has settled over the entire planet. We are the audience in a magic show. The magician has put the object in the box. He has closed the lid. He is waving his hands. We know the trick is happening right now. We know the swap is taking place. But we can't see the trapdoor. The blind spot is massive. It covers millions of miles of space. The object could be doing anything back there. It could be changing course. This is the tactical fear. The strategy group at the Pentagon is worried about this. If the object fires a thruster while it is behind the sun, we won't see the burn. We won't see the trajectory change. When it comes out the other side, it might not be where the math says it should be. It could pop out on a collision course, or it could pop out heading for Mars, or it could be gone entirely, having accelerated to light speed and vanished. We are projecting the orbit, drawing the line where it should appear in a few weeks. We are aiming our telescopes at that empty spot in the future, waiting for it to walk into the frame. But every day that passes in silence, the confidence in that line drops. The pattern of origin we found, the ecliptic alignment, suggests it knows exactly where we are. It knows the layout of the room. If you know the layout and you turn off the lights, you are the only one who can move safely. We are frozen. It is moving. There is also a strange phenomenon happening with the sun itself. It's probably a coincidence. We keep telling ourselves it's a coincidence. But the solar activity is spiking. Flares are erupting on the side of the sun facing the object. The solar wind is becoming turbulent. It's as if the star itself is reacting to the visitor. Is the object disturbing the magnetic field? Is it dragging a wake through the solar atmosphere? Or is it drawing power so aggressively that it is disrupting the local plasma environment? We are watching the sun behave strangely, and we are blaming it on the season. But we wonder, the blind spot isn't just a lack of data. It's a mirror for our own fears. When you can't see the monster becomes whatever you are most afraid of. For the astronomers, the fear is that it will be boring, that it will come out as a rock and they will look foolish. For the generals, the fear is that it will come out as a weapon. For the public, the fear is that it won't come out at all, that we missed the chance, that the visitors came, saw us, and decided we weren't worth stopping for. But the heat. I keep going back to the heat. You don't generate terawatts of power to say goodbye. You don't melt your own hull just to drift away. Energy is used for a purpose. And as the days drag on, as November bleeds into December, the anticipation is building to a breaking point. We are counting the degrees of arc. We are measuring the speed of the Earth. We are calculating the exact moment when the curtain will lift. The blind spot is temporary. Physics demands that the view will clear. And when it does, when the glare fades and the sky turns black again, we aren't going to be looking for a smudge. We aren't going to be looking for a mirror. We are going to be looking for whatever used that heat. We are going to be looking for the butterfly. And the terrified thought that keeps me awake is this: butterflies don't eat. They don't sleep. They have one purpose: to breed, or to feed. The blind spot is holding the secret, but it can't hold it forever. The sun is moving. The time is coming. We are about to see what happens when the machine finishes its work in the dark. We are about to see what Three-Eye Atlas has become, and I have a feeling that when the light comes back, we are going to wish for the blind spot to return. We are going to wish we could close our eyes again, because some things are hidden for a reason. The darkness isn't empty, it's busy. When you close your eyes, you are blind, but if you have a friend standing across the room, you can ask them what is happening. Earth is blind right now. We are stuck in the shadow, staring at the blinding glare of the sun, unable to see the visitor that has slipped behind the curtain. The control rooms in Houston and Munich and Tokyo, they are quiet. The screens are dark. The data feed is dead. But Earth is not the only world with eyes. Millions of miles away, floating in the rusty silence of the fourth planet, we have an outpost. It isn't manned by astronauts. It is manned by robots. Old, reliable, nuclear-powered machines that have been circling Mars for decades. We call them the Mars Proxy. There is the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, a NASA veteran that has been snapping photos of Martian craters since 2006. There is the Trace Gas Orbiter, a European satellite sniffing the thin atmosphere for methane. There is Maven, there is Odyssey. Usually these machines look down. Their job is to map the red dirt, to look for ice, to find landing sites for future missions. They are geologists. They don't care about the stars. But 3 days ago, a command went out from the Deep Space Network. It was a high-priority override. It told the orbiters to stop looking at the ground. It told them to look up. This is a dangerous maneuver. These satellites are designed to look at a planet that fills their field of view. Turning them toward deep space, toward the glare of the sun, risks burning out their sensitive cameras. It risks losing their lock on Mars. It is a desperate move. But we are desperate. The geometry of the solar system right now is the only thing saving us from total ignorance. While Earth is stuck directly behind the sun relative to Three-Eye Atlas, Mars is off to the side. It has a different angle. Imagine a theater. Earth is in the back row, and a tall person, the sun, is standing in front of us. We can't see the stage, but Mars is sitting in the box seats on the far left. Mars has a clear line of sight, so we turned the robots. We told the reconnaissance orbiter to swing its massive camera dish, high rise, the most powerful camera ever sent to another planet, toward the blind spot. We told it to find the heat. The signal delay between Mars and Earth is about 15 minutes right now. You send a command, you wait 15 minutes for it to arrive. The robot takes the picture, then it sends the data back, another 15 minutes of silence, 30 minutes of holding your breath. The engineers at JPL watched the telemetry. They watched the spacecraft slew. They watched the camera stabilize. And then the download began. The data trickled in. Space internet is slow. The image arrives in strips, line by line, painting the screen from top to bottom. At first it was just noise. Star. Fields. The blurry wash of the solar corona. But then, in the center of the frame, the object appeared. It wasn't the sharp mirror-like sphere we saw weeks ago. It wasn't the pulsing lighthouse we tracked earlier in the month. Seen from the side, from the unique vantage point of Mars, Three-Eye Atlas looked wrong. It looked like a ship moving through water, but the water wasn't behaving correctly. To understand what the Mars image shows, you have to understand how a wake works. When a boat moves through a lake, it pushes the water out of the way. It creates a V shape. The waves ripple away from the boat. They spread out. They dissipate. This is Newton's third law: action and reaction. To move forward, you have to push something back. Comets have wakes too. They are called tails. The solar wind hits the comet and the dust streams out behind it. It flows away like smoke from a candle. It is a passive, chaotic stream. But the image from Mars, captured just hours ago, shows something that defies fluid dynamics. Three-Eye Atlas has a tail. We can see the dust. We can see the gas glowing in the sunlight. But the dust isn't flowing away. The dust is rippling, and the ripples are moving toward the object. I want you to visualize this clearly. Imagine a boat moving across a lake, but instead of the waves spreading out behind it, the water is rushing in toward the engine. Imagine the wake reversing itself, collapsing inward, hugging the hull. That is what the high-rise camera captured. There are waves in the dust cloud, perfect concentric rings, like a target. And by analyzing the color change caused by motion, we can see the direction of flow. The waves are traveling upstream. They are starting in the deep tail and racing forward, crashing into the back of the nucleus. This is the anomaly that changes everything. We call them gravity waves. Not the kind created by colliding black holes, those are different. These are physical waves in the medium of space-time, acting on the dust. Or, more accurately, they are evidence of a gravitational distortion. Dust is light, it floats, it goes where gravity tells it to go. If the dust is flowing backward against the pressure of the solar wind, against the momentum of the comet, it means something is pulling it. It means the back of the object has more gravity than the front. This is impossible for a natural object. A rock has one center of gravity. It's in the middle. To have a gravity well behind you, that implies you are creating it artificially. The term Alcubierre drive has been thrown around in science fiction for decades. The idea is that you don't move the ship, you move the space around the ship. You compress the space in front of you and expand the space behind you. You fall forward into a gravity well that you create yourself. We never thought it was real. We thought it was just math on a chalkboard. But looking at the Mars data, looking at those impossible, backward-flowing ripples, it looks like someone is pinching the fabric of space. The dust is just the tracer. It's like throwing flour into the air to see a laser beam. The dust is revealing the invisible shape of the engine's field, and the shape is a funnel. The dust is being sucked into a vortex directly behind the object. And here's the terrifying part. The vortex is pulsing. It matches the 17.4-hour rhythm. Every time the object pulses, the ripples snap tight. The dust rushes in faster. Then it relaxes. Then it snaps again. It's like a jellyfish swimming. It's a propulsion stroke. The scientific term for this is a retrograde flow, but the engineers looking at the screens are calling it the anti-wake. It changes everything we thought about the object's intent. If you are just drifting, you have a normal tail. If you are using a rocket, you have a plume of fire shooting out the back. But if you have an anti-wake, it means you are gripping the universe itself. It implies traction. Think about that word. Traction. You need traction to drive a car. You need tires to grip the road. But in space, there is no road. There is nothing to grip. That's why rockets have to throw fuel out the back, to push off their own exhaust. 3i Atlas isn't throwing anything out. It is grabbing the vacuum. It is digging its claws into the geometry of space-time and pulling itself forward. This explains the heat we saw a few days ago. Manipulating gravity isn't free. It costs energy. Massive amounts of energy. That reactor we detected? That waste heat pouring off the dark side? That's the cost of bending the road. The Mars proxy has given us a view of the engine room, and it is far more advanced than a simple thruster. We are looking at technology that makes our nuclear rockets look like steam engines. We are looking at a species, or a machine, that treats gravity like we treat aerodynamics. To them, gravity is just wind. They can shape it, they can curve it, they can fly on it. And the speed? We checked the telemetry from the Mars orbiters. They measured the angular velocity of the object. It is accelerating. It's not falling toward the sun anymore. It is driving. The ballistic curve, the natural path gravity should take it on, is gone. 3i Atlas is deviating. It is shallowing its dive. It is turning. And because of the anti-wake, because of this grip it has on space, it can turn sharper than any natural object. It doesn't need to do a long, slow loop. It can bank. The Mars data shows a course correction happening right now behind the sun. If we hadn't turned the Mars cameras, if we had stayed blind, we would be looking at the wrong spot in the sky when it emerges. We would have lost it. But thanks to the robots, we know the truth. It is maneuvering. There's a haunting quality to these images coming from Mars. They are grainy, black and white, high contrast. They look like the old photos from the Apollo missions. You see the black jagged edge of the Mars horizon in the EUCDA corner. And then floating in the infinite black, you see the visitor. It looks lonely. It's a single speck of light surrounded by this ghostly, impossible halo of backward-flowing dust. It reminds us of how small we are. We have these tiny metal boxes circling a dead planet, beaming back pictures of a god machine moving through our system. The orbiter wasn't built for this. Its camera was meant to look at rocks and ice caps. It feels like asking a security camera to photograph a ghost. But the ghost is real. The scientists processing the data are seeing details that defy logic. Inside the ripples, inside the gravity vortex, the light is bending. Gravitational lensing. Usually you need a galaxy to bend light. You need the mass of 1 billion stars. But 3i Atlas is bending the light of the background stars just by passing in front of them. The Mars images show stars jumping as the object passes. They warp. They smear. This confirms the density of the field. The energy density required to bend light in a local area is almost infinite. If this machine were to pass close to Earth, the tides would go crazy. The atmosphere would bulge. Electronics would fry. Thank God it is far away. Thank God it is near the sun. But the wrong way waves tell us something else. They tell us that the machine isn't just surviving the sun, it is using the sun. The gravity of the sun is a slope. 3i Atlas is skiing on it. It is using its own gravity drive to amplify the sun's pull, to slingshot itself faster than physics should allow. It is stealing momentum from our star. When this data hit the Deep Space Network servers an hour ago, the reaction was different from the previous discoveries. Before, there was curiosity. Look at the weird light. Look at the heat. Now there is silence. The bad kind of silence. The silence of people realizing they are outgunned. You don't build a gravity drive to explore. You build a gravity drive to travel between galaxies. You build it to cross the voids that light takes millions of years to cross. This isn't a probe. A probe drifts. This is a vessel. And the fact that the waves are moving the wrong way, inward, suggests a level of control that feels almost biological. It's breathing the dust in, it's feeding on the wake. Some of the younger researchers are calling it the eater, because that's what the image looks like. It looks like a mouth in the dust, sucking the universe in. We have sent commands to the other Mars orbiters. Look, confirm. We are turning the Trace Gas Orbiter. We are turning Odyssey. We are risking every asset we have on Mars. We don't care about the methane anymore. We don't care about the craters. We need to see the wake. Because if that wake changes, if those ripples stop moving inward and start pushing outward, that means it's breaking. That means it's stopping. And if a ship with a gravity drive decides to stop in our solar system, we are not the hosts. We are the natives. Watching a galleon drop anchor. As Act 7 draws to a close, the Mars proxy has done its job. Earth is still blind. The sun is still hiding the visitor from our view. But the message from Mars is clear. Physics is broken. The visitor is creating its own rules. It is bending light. It is pulling space. It is rowing upstream against the flow of the cosmos. The image from HiRise is being shared on secure channels now. It hasn't been released to the public yet. How do you explain to the world that a comet has a reverse wake? How do you explain that a rock is generating a gravitational field stronger than a planet? You can't. So the scientists stare at the screen. They stare at the ripples. They trace the lines of the dust spiraling into the dark heart of the object. And they realize that the anomaly isn't just a glitch, it's a signature. We know what a rocket looks like. We know what a jet looks like. Now we know what a gravity drive looks like. It looks like a ripple moving the wrong way. The Mars orbiters are drifting back into the dark side of the red planet now. Their batteries are draining. They need to recharge. They turn their eyes away from the sun, back to the safe, cold ground of Mars. They have seen enough. They have passed the baton back to us. We know it's awake. We know it's driving. We know it's turning. And now we just have to wait for it to come out from behind the curtain. We know what to look for now. We won't be looking for a comet. We will be looking for the distortion. We will be looking for the thing that eats the light. The proxy has spoken. The visitor isn't falling, it's flying. There's a speed limit in the universe for light, but there is no speed limit for a secret, especially when that secret changes the world. We thought the Mars data, the grainy, haunting image of the anti-wake captured by the robotic proxy, would stay locked in a secure server at NASA. We thought the men and women in the high-back chairs would take weeks to analyze it, scrub it, and perhaps, eventually, release a sanitized version to the public. A version where the ripples were smoothed out. A version where the impossible gravity waves were explained away as sensor noise. But in 2025, information behaves like water. It always finds a crack. It started 3 hours ago. Not on a news channel, not in a scientific journal. It started on a message board. A single file uploaded by an anonymous user with no username, no IP address, and no caption. Just a raw, unprocessed image file from the HiRise camera. It showed the visitor floating in the dark. It showed the dust. And it showed the ripples moving the wrong way. Within 10 minutes, it was shared 1,000 times. Within an hour, it was on every screen from Tokyo to Toronto. The Mars leak became the most viewed image in human history before breakfast was served in New York. And then the reaction began. If the previous chapter was about the robot seeing the truth, this chapter is about the humans trying to hide it. We are witnessing the construction of a wall built not of bricks but of doubt. The builders of this wall, the senior scientists, the government spokespeople, the heads of the great institutions, are what we call the architects of disbelief. They are not villains. They are not trying to hurt us. They are trying to save us from panic. They are trying to save science from chaos. They have spent their lives building a model of the universe where rocks are rocks, where gravity obeys Newton, and where we are alone. And now, faced with a picture that burns that model to the ground, they are doing the only thing they can do. They are denying the fire. The first official statement came out 40 minutes after the leak. It didn't address the gravity waves. It didn't address the impossible physics. It attacked the camera. Compression artifact. That was the phrase they used. They told the world that the ripples weren't real. They said that sending a large image from Mars to Earth over a slow connection requires heavy compression. They said the software chopped the image into blocks, and the ripples were just digital ghosts, a glitch in the JPEG, a stutter in the transmission. It was a brilliant explanation. It sounded technical. It sounded boring. It gave people permission to stop worrying. Oh, it's just a glitch. The internet is slow. I get it. But to the people who know, to the engineers who built the camera, to the physicists who understand fluid dynamics, it was a lie. You don't get concentric, Doppler-shifted waves from a compression glitch. You get squares. You get pixelation. You don't get perfect geometry that matches the 17.4-hour pulse rate of the object. But the architects are powerful. They have the podium. They have the letterhead. We are watching a battle for reality. On one side, there is the data, the heat, the pulse, the alignment, the wake. On the other side, there is the desperate human need for normalcy. The skeptics are rallying. They are going on television, pointing at the image and drawing lines on it. They are showing how, if you squint, it looks like a normal tail. They are ignoring the thermal data we saw weeks ago. They are ignoring the ecliptic alignment. They are isolating this one image and tearing it apart until it means nothing. This is how denial works. You don't fight the whole army. You pick off the soldiers one by one. They say the heat is a sensor error. They say the pulse is a rotation coincidence. They say the wake is a camera glitch. If you treat each piece of evidence as a mistake, you can keep the universe safe, you can keep the aliens away. But inside the laboratories, the mood is very different. The younger scientists, the ones who haven't spent 40 years defending a tenure, are furious. They are looking at the raw data, the stuff that hasn't been compressed, and they see the truth. There is a story circulating right now about a meeting at AGTB, a major European observatory. A graduate student stood up and showed the correlation between the gravity waves and the pulse timing. She showed that the math was perfect. It wasn't a glitch, it was a mechanism. And she was told to sit down. She was told that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is the Sagan standard. It is the golden rule of science. And usually it is a good rule. It stops us from believing in ghosts and magic. But right now the architects are using it as a weapon. They are moving the goalposts. We show them the heat. Not extraordinary enough. We show them the pulse. Coincidence. We show them the gravity drive. Glitch. What counts as evidence? If a spaceship landed on the lawn of the White House, would they call it a prank? The fear isn't scientific, it's existential. If 3i Atlas is artificial, then everything we know about our history is wrong. It means we are the ants in the driveway and a truck just pulled up. It means our politics, our wars, our borders, they are all petty distractions in the face of a superior power. The architects are terrified of that collapse. They are terrified of the religious panic. They are terrified of the economic crash, so they are buying time. They know the object is behind the sun. They know we are in the blind spot. They know they have a few days of silence before the visitor emerges. They are trying to hold the dam together until they can come up with a better story. But the public isn't buying it. This is the difference between 2025 and the past. You can't control the narrative anymore. There are thousands of amateur astronomers. There are millions of people with processing software on their laptops. Right now, as we speak, thousands of people are analyzing the Mars leak. They are uncompressing it. They are enhancing the contrast. And they are finding things the architects tried to hide. Look at the edge of the wake. Look at the way the starlight bends around the hull. One independent researcher in Brazil just posted an analysis of the background stars. He measured the distortion. He calculated the mass required to bend light that much. The number he came up with is impossible for a rock. It's the mass of a small moon, squeezed into a sphere a few miles wide. That is density that doesn't exist in comets. That is the density of a neutron star. Or the density of a singularity engine. The internet is buzzing with the term singularity. The architects are trying to scrub the forums. They are flagging posts as misinformation. They are calling it a conspiracy theory. But you can't censor gravity. The divide is growing. It's tearing families apart. It's tearing faculties apart. There are the believers, not in a religious sense, but in a data sense. The people who trust the instruments, and there are the deniers, the people who trust the textbooks. And in the middle, there is the silence of the sun. We are waiting for the verdict. The object is still back there. It is still hidden in the glare. It doesn't care about our debates. It doesn't care about our press conferences. It is running its program. It is charging its core. It is warping space. And the tragedy of the architects is that they are fighting a battle they have already lost. They are trying to convince us that the sky is empty. But we have seen the footprint. There is a specific kind of arrogance in thinking that if we refuse to name something, it ceases to exist. We think that if we call it a comet, it will behave like a comet. We think that if we label the gravity waves as noise, the laws of physics will bow to our denial. But the universe is indifferent to our labels. Three-Eye Atlas is what it is, and the cracks in the wall are getting wider. Just an hour ago, a second leak occurred. This one didn't come from Mars. It came from a solar observatory, one of the satellites watching the sun itself. It wasn't looking at the comet, it was looking at the solar corona, the halo of plasma around the star. But in the corner of the frame, caught in the edge of the view, there was a disturbance. The solar wind, the stream of charged particles flowing out from the sun, was bending. It looked like a rock in a stream. The plasma was flowing around an invisible obstacle. The obstacle is in the blind spot. It is exactly where Three-Eye Atlas is supposed to be. But a rock doesn't deflect the solar wind like that. A planet does. A magnetic field does. The architects haven't commented on this one yet. They are probably in a room right now, shouting at each other, trying to figure out how to explain a magnetic field that is stronger than Jupiter's coming from a rock 3 miles wide. They will come up with something. They always do. Solar magnetic reconnection. Plasma instability. But they sound tired. You can hear it in their voices. They are running out of words. And the public is starting to realize that the glitch isn't in the camera. The glitch is in the explanation. We are watching the collapse of scientific consensus in real time. And deep down, even the architects know the truth. They aren't trying to convince us. They are trying to convince themselves. Because if they admit what they see, if they look at that gravity wave and say, yes, that is propulsion, then they have to answer the next question. The question that keeps everyone awake. If it has an engine and it has a map and it is stealing energy from our sun, where is it going next? A comet goes where gravity throws it. A ship goes where the pilot steers it. The architects are terrified because they know that when Three-Eye Atlas comes out from behind the sun, it might not be on the exit trajectory anymore. It might be turning. And if it turns toward Earth, no amount of denial, no amount of compression artifact excuses, no amount of press releases will save us. The image from Mars was a warning. It was a glimpse of the capability we are dealing with. We are arguing about pixels while a god is refueling in our backyard. The denial is a luxury. It is a comfort blanket. It allows us to go to work tomorrow and pretend that the world is the same as it was yesterday. But the blanket is being pulled away. The architects of disbelief are building a fortress of logic to protect us from the unknown. But they forgot one thing. Fortresses are for people who are under siege. By building the wall, they have admitted the threat. They aren't acting like scientists exploring a wonder. They are acting like generals preparing for a defeat. And that, more than any blurry photo, more than any heat signature, tells us everything we need to know. They know it's real, and they are terrified. As Act 8 ends, the standoff is absolute. The official story is glitch. The underground story is contact. And the sun is starting to shift. The glare is starting to fade. The blind spot is moving. The geometry is opening up. The alignment is breaking. The visitor is coming back into the light, and this time I don't think it's going to be hiding. The silence of the architects is about to be broken by the roar of the reality they tried to suppress. The disbelief is fading. The awe and the horror is about to begin. We are about to learn that the truth doesn't need a press conference. It just needs a clear sky. And the sky is clearing. The wait is finally over. For weeks we have been staring at the sun, cursing the glare, blinded by the geometry of our own solar system. We felt like prisoners in a cell, knowing that something monumental was happening just outside the window, but unable to see through the walls. We relied on leaks from Mars. We relied on thermal ghosts. We relied on our imagination to fill in the terrifying blanks left by the blind spot. But the solar system is a clockwork machine, and gears always turn. The Earth moved, the sun drifted, the angle opened up. This morning the curtain lifted. The radio interference from the sun, that wall of static that has been blocking our view, began to fade. The first clear line of sight to the visitor was re-established by the very large array in New Mexico. The giant white dishes, standing like mushrooms in the high desert, turned in unison. They pointed at the spot in the sky where the math said Three-Eye Atlas should be. They listened for the silence. They listened for the 17.4-hour pulse we tracked earlier in November. They listened for the echo of a dead rock. They found none of those things. The math was wrong. The object wasn't where the ballistic trajectory predicted. The gravity drive we glimpsed in the Mars data was real. The visitor had steered. It had drifted thousands of miles off course, climbing higher above the plane of the planets, positioning itself like a speaker on a stage. And when the receivers finally locked onto its new position, they didn't pick up a pulse. They picked up a scream. The rhythm is gone. The steady mechanical heartbeat, tick, 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 that haunted us for weeks has stopped. It has been replaced by something far more complex and far more terrifying. The signal flooding the receivers right now isn't a metronome, it is a language. Imagine the difference between hearing a drum and hearing a symphony. A drum is a signal of presence. It says, I am here. A symphony is a signal of content. It says, this is what I know. The data coming down from the array is so dense that it is clogging the buffers. It is overwhelming the storage drives. We aren't looking at a simple beep on a graph anymore. We are looking at a waterfall plot, a visual representation of radio waves, and it looks like a tapestry. It is woven. There are thousands of frequencies broadcasting simultaneously, high notes, low notes, patterns shifting and interlocking in milliseconds. It sounds like static to the human ear, but to the computer it looks like a library being downloaded in a single second. This changes the entire conversation. In the previous act, the skeptics, the architects of disbelief, tried to tell us the gravity waves were a camera glitch. They tried to tell us the heat was a sensor error. But you cannot fake a terabyte of non-repeating structured data. Glitches repeat. Noise is random. This signal is neither. It has syntax. It has grammar. It has a beginning and it has no end. The debate about whether 3i Atlas is artificial ended the moment this signal hit the ground. Nature does not broadcast in broadband. Pulsars don't use error correction algorithms. Black holes don't transmit prime numbers. And yes, there are primes. Buried in the header of the signal, like a handshake, there is a sequence of prime numbers. It is the universal greeting. It is the way you tell a stranger that you understand math, that you are conscious. But the primes were just the wrapper. They were the envelope. Once we opened the envelope, we found the letter. And the letter is written in a code we have never seen. Cryptographers from the NSA, mathematicians from universities, and AI researchers from Silicon Valley are all looking at the same stream right now. The internet is alive with the signal. People are visualizing it, turning it into audio, turning it into images. They are looking for faces in the noise. They are looking for blueprints. But the professionals are seeing something else. They are seeing a transmission rate that implies urgency. The object isn't just talking, it is shouting. It is dumping its core memory. Why? Why the rush? Why wait until after the conjunction, after the engine warm-up, to start speaking? The theory circulating in the quiet corners of the labs is the courier hypothesis. If you are a traveler and you come to a new village, you don't start shouting immediately. You watch. You map the village, like it did when it scanned the ecliptic. You warm up your voice, like it did when the heat rose. And then right before you leave, or right before you change things forever, you deliver the oop message. The signal is directional. That is the detail that sends a chill down the spine. It isn't broadcasting to the whole universe, it is a tight beam. And the beam is pointed directly at Earth. It adjusted its position, it fired its engines, it climbed out of the solar glare, just to get a clear line of sight to us. We are the target audience. This isn't a leak. This isn't waste noise. This is a conversation. But it's a one-way conversation. We are the listeners. It is the speaker. And it is speaking too fast for us to understand. We are trying to decode it in real time. We are looking for patterns that match our own languages, our own images. But the structure is alien. It is three-dimensional. The data seems to rely on the relationship between the frequencies, not just the sequence. It's holographic. If you look at one part, it looks like noise. If you look at the whole thing at once, it looks like a structure. What is it saying? There are three leading theories tonight. The first is the encyclopedia. Maybe it is a gift. Maybe this is the galactic welcome basket. History, science, medicine, art, all the knowledge of an older civilization beamed to the new kids on the block. It's a beautiful thought. It's the hopeful thought. It means they want us to grow. The second theory is the logbook. Maybe it isn't talking to us. Maybe it's talking about us. Remember the scanning? Remember the pulses aligning with the ecliptic? Maybe this signal is the report. It scanned our planet. It saw our cities, our oceans, our satellites, our wars. And now it is compiling that data and beaming it back home. We are the specimen. This is the lab report. The beam is pointed at Earth because it's using Earth as a relay, or perhaps it's just tagging us before it sends the data into the deep dark. But the third theory is the one that keeps the generals awake. The Trojan horse. In the digital age, information is a weapon. Code is a weapon. If you want to destroy a civilization, you don't need lasers. You don't need bombs. You just need to send them a virus. A blueprint for a machine that blows up when they build it. A mathematical proof that drives their AI insane. A biological sequence that creates a plague. If 3i Atlas is a weapon, this signal is the payload. And we are downloading it. We are catching it with every dish we have. We are storing it on our servers. We are letting it into our house. The signal strength is increasing. It started faint this morning, but as the object moves further from the sun, the noise floor drops and the message gets clearer. It is shifting up the spectrum. It started in radio, now it's bleeding into microwave. Soon it might be visible light. Shutterstock A laser flashing in the sky. The sheer energy required to transmit this much data this quickly is staggering. It confirms the power source we suspected weeks ago. The reactor on the dark side isn't just an engine, it's a transmitter. It is burning. Terawatts of power to scream at us, and the world has gone quiet to listen. The arguments from the last few weeks feel petty now. The architects of disbelief have nothing to say. You can't argue with a prime number sequence. You can't argue with a narrowband signal that tracks the rotation of the Earth. The reality of the contact has settled over humanity like a heavy blanket. We are no longer asking, is it real? We are asking, what does it want? The psychological shift is profound. For all of human history, we have shouted into the void. We have sent our own signals, Arecibo, Voyager, begging for a reply. We wanted to know we weren't alone. But now that the reply is here, now that the phone is ringing, we are paralyzed. We are afraid to answer. Because the voice on the other end isn't asking a question. It is reading a list. There is a rhythm to the data blocks. They come in bursts. Header, data, footer, silence. Header, data, footer. Silence. It's organized. It's automated. It feels bureaucratic. It doesn't feel emotional. It doesn't feel like greetings, brothers. It feels like a computer executing a file transfer protocol. Uploading file 1 of 10,000. And amidst the chaos of the decoding efforts, a disturbing pattern has emerged in the header of the packets, the part of the signal that acts like a label. It keeps repeating a specific sequence of pulses. When we map those pulses to visual data, they form a shape. It's a circle, with a dot in the center, then a circle with 2 dots, then 3. It's a stellar map, but it's not a map of where it came from. It's a map of our solar system. The Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth. But when it gets to Earth, the pattern changes. The Earth symbol is highlighted. It pulses. And then there is a new symbol next to it. A symbol we don't recognize. A geometry that doesn't exist in our planets. Is it a target marker? Is it a destination? Or is it a date? The scientists are racing to interpret this Earth marker. Is it a countdown? The signal has a timer embedded in it. A countdown clock ticking backward. It's not counting up like a stopwatch. It's counting down to 0. Based on the frequency of the ticks, the countdown hits 0 in 3 days. What happens in 3 days? Does the transmission end? Does the object leave? Or does the real event begin? The message in the noise might not be the main event. It might be the warning siren. Evacuate. Or prepare. Or submit. The public reaction is a mix of religious fervor and digital obsession. People are recording the static and playing it to their children. They are claiming they can hear voices in it. The message has become a mirror. If you are hopeful, you hear a cure for cancer. If you are fearful, you hear a declaration of war. But the object remains indifferent. It sits there in the black sky, invisible to the naked eye but deafening to our machines, pouring its soul into our antennas. It is 2025 and the Tower of Babel has been rebuilt. We are all listening to the same voice, but no one understands the language. The unity of the Mars leak has fractured into a million interpretations. But one fact remains absolute. The sender is intelligent, the sender is powerful, and the sender is focused on us. As we move toward the end of this act, the signal begins to change again. The complexity ramps up. It's no longer just audio or text. We are seeing hints of biological data, strings of amino acids, DNA helices encoded in binary. It is sending us the code of life. Is it their life, or is it ours? Did they read our biology, and now they are sending it back to us, corrected? Here's where you made a mistake. Here's how you fix the glitch in your cells. The allure of the message is irresistible. The scientists can't stop downloading it, even though they know it might be a trap. It is the apple in the garden. Knowledge, infinite knowledge, raining down from the sky. Who could say no? Who could turn off the dish? We are addicted to the mystery. We are drinking from the fire hose. But in the background, the telemetry from the gravity drive tells a different story. The object is still moving. It hasn't stopped to chat. It is drifting away from the sun, heading back out toward the dark. The signal is a drive-by download. It is leaving a package on our doorstep without slowing down. This implies that whatever the message is, it is final. It isn't a dialogue, it's a monologue. It's a testament. And as the countdown in the header ticks closer to 0, a new realization dawns on the team at the VLA. The signal isn't just coming from the object, the signal is changing the object. The transmission is draining the reactor. The heat signature is dropping, the light is fading. It is spending its life force to send this message. It is dying to tell us this. That changes the emotional weight of the noise. It isn't a threat, it's a sacrifice. A machine or a crew is burning the last of its fuel, the last of its warmth, to make sure we hear this. Why? What is so important that it is worth dying for? What truth is so heavy that it requires the death of a starship to deliver? We are about to find out. The countdown is approaching 0. The static is clearing. The final packet is queuing up. And when the silence returns, we will be left alone with the message. The noise was the medium. The silence will be the answer. And we are terrified that we might finally understand what it has been saying all along. The signal spikes one last time. A crescendo of data, a scream of pure information. And then the waterfall plot freezes. The buffer is full. The transmission is complete. Act 9 ends with the world holding a hard drive full of alien ghosts, waiting for the first person to crack the password. The message is here. Now the real danger begins. Reading it. When a storm passes, the silence it leaves behind is not the same silence that existed before the wind began to howl. It is a heavy, ringing silence. It is the silence of changed things. The trees are bent at different angles. The air smells of ozone and wet earth. The landscape looks familiar, yet fundamentally alien, because you now know what it looks like when the sky turns black and the world tries to blow away. It is the final days of November 2025 and the storm has passed. The radio scream that flooded our receivers in the previous act is cut off. The waterfall plots on the monitors in New Mexico and Australia have gone flat. The chaotic, intricate symphony of data that overwhelmed our hard drives for 72 hours ended as abruptly as it began. There was no fade out. There was no goodbye. The signal simply hit a hard stop, like a cable being pulled from a wall. And with the death of the signal, the object itself has died. The thermal reactors that were blazing on the night side, the engines that bent gravity and defied physics, have gone cold. The mirror-like skin that reflected our own sun back at us with blinding intensity has dimmed. 3A Atlas has returned to the dark. It is no longer a lighthouse. It is no longer a star. It is a shadow again, drifting outward, sliding back into the deep freeze of the vacuum. We are left standing on the shore, watching the ship sail over the horizon, holding a bottle with a message inside that we cannot read. This is the final act of perception. The story of the object is over. The story of us is just beginning. And the first thing we have to deal with is the crushing weight of the anticlimax. Human beings are storytellers. We crave endings. We wanted a landing. We wanted a war. We wanted a handshake on the lawn of the United Nations. We wanted closure. But the universe does not owe us a third act resolution. The visitor came, it saw, it spoke, and it left. It treated us not as a destination, but as a waypoint. A rest stop on a highway that stretches for billions of years. The realization that we were just a stopover is a profound blow to our collective ego. For thousands of years, we believed we were the center of creation. Even when we learned we orbited the sun, we thought we were the only minds in the darkness. We thought that if aliens came, they would come for us. They would come to conquer us or to save us. But 3I Atlas did neither. It ignored our borders, it ignored our politics, it ignored our attempts to hail it. It simply scanned the room, dropped a packet of data, refueled on our gravity, and moved on. We are the ants on the sidewalk, and a giant just stepped over us. The giant didn't step on us, it didn't crouch down to say hello, it just kept walking. And that indifference is more haunting than any invasion fleet. It implies that we are small, it implies that the galaxy is busy, and we are just noticing the traffic now. In the control rooms, the mood is a mix of exhaustion and grief. The scientists are packing up their equipment. The crisis teams are disbanding. The Mars proxy satellites are being turned back toward the red planet to resume their boring work of mapping craters. But the people operating them are not the same people they were a month ago. You can see it in their eyes. They have looked into the abyss, and the abyss looked back, blinked, and turned away. The debate over the origin is no longer a debate about if. It is a debate about who. The architects of disbelief, the skeptics who tried to deny the gravity waves, have gone silent. There are no more press releases about compression artifacts. There are no more talk show segments about glare. The data is too overwhelming. The sheer volume of the transmission, the impossible heat, the orbital maneuvering, it is undeniable. We have been visited. But by what? Was it a probe? A biological ship? A sentient machine? A seed pod? The thermal patterns we saw suggested a machine. The anti-wake suggested physics we can't comprehend. But the signal suggests a mind. It was dense. It was structured. It had the complexity of a library. The Decoder Project is already the largest scientific collaboration in human history. Every supercomputer on Earth is currently churning through the data packet. We are looking for a Rosetta Stone. We are looking for a primer. But so far, the screen remains black. We have the book, but we don't know the alphabet. This paralysis is the new reality. We possess knowledge that could cure every disease, solve every energy crisis, and unlock the stars. Or we possess a recipe for a bomb that will crack the crust of the earth. We don't know, and we might not know for 100 years. The message is a time capsule. It wasn't meant for the generation that caught it, it was meant for the generation smart enough to read it. And while the scientists wrestle with the code, the rest of the world is wrestling with the shift. This is the psychological aftermath. The world feels different today than it did in September. The borders on the maps look silly. The arguments in the parliament sound petty. The stock market, which crashed and rallied and crashed again during the crisis, feels like a game of Monopoly played in a burning house. We have a new context. We are not alone. And the neighbors are not just out there. They are here. They know where we live. They have our address. The map on the ecliptic proved that. They aligned with us. They tagged us. There's a feeling of being watched that will never go away. Before 3i Atlas, the night sky was a ceiling. Now it is a window. And we know that things are looking in. Religious leaders are scrambling to rewrite their sermons. Philosophers are writing new books. The old questions, why are we here, have been replaced by new ones. What are we to them? Are we a wildlife preserve? Are we a hazard? Are we a resource? The object is crossing the orbit of Jupiter now. It is moving fast, riding the wave of its own gravity drive. It is fading from the visible spectrum. Soon it will be just another number in a database. 3i Atlas. Gone. But the wake it left behind, not the physical wake, but the cultural one, is expanding. We are seeing a surge in funding for space programs, not because of wonder, but because of fear. We need to know what else is out there. We need eyes that can see the gravity waves. We need ships that can intercept the next one. The age of innocence is over. The age of defense has begun. We are building better radars. We are building bigger telescopes. We are turning Earth into a fortress of observation. Never again will a visitor sneak up on us. Never again will we be blind in the conjunction. But amidst the fear and the preparation, there's also a strange, quiet beauty in what just happened. For a few weeks, the entire human race looked in the same direction. We stopped fighting each other to watch the sky. We shared the same anxiety. We shared the same awe. We were for a brief moment one planet. And as the visitor departs, it leaves us with the gift of perspective. We are fragile. We are young. We are ignorant. But we are here. We survived the encounter. The final telemetry from the James Webb Telescope shows the object one last time. It is a grain of sand against the backdrop of the Milky Way. It is dark. It is cold. It is indistinguishable from the stars. But we know what it is. It is a seed. And it has been planted in our minds. The pulse has stopped, but the rhythm is still echoing in our heads. 17.4 hours. The beat of a different drum. The message is locked in our servers, waiting to be born. And the silence that returns to the solar system is not empty anymore. It is pregnant with possibility. We used to look at the stars and wish for a sign. Now we have the sign. And we are realizing that the wish was the easy part. The hard part is living with the answer. The answer is that the universe is teeming. It is busy. It is loud. It is advanced. And we are just waking up. 3i Atlas was the alarm clock. It rang. It shook the bed. And now it is turned off. But we can't go back to sleep. You can't unsee the mirror in the sky. You can't unfeel the heat on the back of your neck. As the year 2025 comes to a close, we stand on the threshold of a new era, the post-contact era. We don't know if they are coming back. We don't know if there are more of them. We don't know if the message is a warning or a welcome. All we know is that the door is open. And as we look up at the fading point of light, watching it slip away into the infinite black, we are left with one final, chilling thought. It mapped us. It scanned us. It signaled us. And then it left. It didn't stay to harvest us. It didn't stay to kill us. It left because it had finished its job. And if its job was just to tag us, then who is the tag for? The scout has gone home. Now. We wait for the fleet. Or maybe we wait for nothing. Maybe we are just a curiosity, a roadside attraction. But as the silence settles back over the earth and the static clears from the radios and the stars burn steady and cold in the winter sky, we know the truth. We are changed. The perception has shifted. We are not the masters of the dark. We are the children hiding in it. And the dark is full of engines. The story of 3i Atlas ends here. But the story of what happens next, that is up to us. We have the data. We have the fear. We have the hope. The sky is waiting. And for the first time in history, We are watching it back. The night is cold, and the wind is picking up outside the observatory. The screens are dimming. The coffee is cold. The technicians are putting on their coats, heading home to their families, heading home to a world that is smaller than it was this morning. They will look at their children and wonder what kind of sky they will grow up under. A sky of wonder or a sky of threat? The answer is locked in the hard drives humming in the server room. The answer is written in the prime numbers and the star maps and the biological code that we are just beginning to unravel. It is a burden, but it is also a promise. We are no longer alone. The loneliness of the human species, the solitude that has defined our existence since the first hominid looked up at the moon, is over. We have touched the other. It was a brief touch, a brush of shoulders in a crowded room. But it happened. And now we have to decide what to do with that connection. Do we hide? Do we build walls? Or do we build a ship of our own? Do we learn to speak the language of the signal? The object is gone, but the invitation remains. It invited us to look up. It invited us to think bigger. It invited us to join the pattern of origin that spans the galaxy. Maybe the test wasn't surviving the visit. Maybe the test is what we do now that the visitor is gone. Can we hold on to this unity? Can we hold on to this awe? Or will we drift back into our petty squabbles, forgetting the giant that walked past us? I look at the last image on the screen. The grain of sand, the spark. It is barely there. But it is enough. It is enough to change everything. The curtain has fallen on Act X. But the theater is not empty. We are still here. And now we know the play is real. The script is being written in the stars, and for the first time we know that we are not the only authors. The universe is a collaborative work. And we have just been handed a pen. The silence is back. But it is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of anticipation. We are listening. We are watching. And we are ready. The waiting sky is no longer waiting. It is speaking. And we are finally learning how to hear.